we will first give you the translation of the prophecy, and then give you the possible meaning. 9/11. Earth-shaking fire from the center of the earth will cause tremors around the new city. Two great rocks will war for a long time. Then Arethusa will redden a new river. This is one we can all relate to, as many of the predictions happened a long time ago. Center of the earth doesn't make much sense, unless you think 9/11 was an inside job in that the explosions came from within the building. It might also mean that the USA is arguably the most powerful nation, the center of the earth. The new city, New York, experiencing tremors makes sense, as does two great rocks, the Twin Towers. But they don't war for a long time, so was he talking about Islamic terrorism and the USA? Arethusa was a Greek nymph, and we can't relate that to the disaster, but redden a new river could be a river of blood. In another quatrain, he supposedly wrote, "Two steel birds will fall from the sky on the metropolis. The sky will burn at 45 degrees latitude." We don't need to explain steel birds, and New York lies at 40 degrees north, although there is evidence to suggest that the first part was made up, and the quatrain actually went like this: "The sky will burn at 45 degrees latitude. Fire approaches the great new city." All those quatrains you might find talking about the 9th month are also fake, so really, the main things we can take are two rocks, 40 degrees, and the new city, as well as fire and blood. But Nostradamus wasn't exactly sparing with his fire and blood prophecies. The rise of Hitler. From the depths of the west of Europe, a young child will be born of poor people. He who by his tongue will seduce a great troop, his fame will increase toward the realm of the east. Two lines from another quatrain read, "Beasts ferocious with hunger will cross the rivers. The greater part of the battlefield will be against Hister." By West Europe, we can say Germany. Hitler wasn't born poor but experienced poverty in his early life and was homeless for a while. His populist policies were also meant to support the downtrodden. He was a great orator who got most of the country behind him and certainly seduced a great troop. His fame or infamy did increase. In the other lines, the beasts that cross the river could be Germany invading countries, and of course, Hister could be Hitler, although it's thought Nostradamus was using it as a name for the Danube River. The French Revolution. From the enslaved populace, songs, chants, and demands, while princes and lords are held captive in prisons, these will in the future by headless idiots be received as divine prayers. We might look at the enslaved populace as what was known as the Third Estate, the common people of France who, for the most part, had been subjected to poverty and iniquities. They banded together with chants and demands and stormed the Bastille. Indeed, many of the noble people were imprisoned by the tides of the mob. As for headless, we give you the guillotine. Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombing. Near the gates and within two cities, there will be scourges the like of which was never seen. Famine within plague, people put out by steel, crying to the great immortal God for relief. The two cities makes sense, and a scourge never seen was the dropping of the first atomic bomb on a populace. Famine and plague could be radiation poisoning, and those sufferers left crying for relief. The Great Fire of London. The blood of the just will commit a fault at London. Burnt through lightning of 23's the 6, the ancient lady will fall from her high place. Several of the same sect will be killed. The fault was possibly a fire that started at a bakery owned by a man called Thomas Fariner. That was in London, and the Great Fire happened in 1666. 3 times 20 equals 60, and plus the 6, you have 66. London could be the ancient lady, and indeed, London was at the time in a very high place. The city didn't fall, but the destruction was vast. The BBC reports that the city had to be virtually rebuilt. As for the same sect, was he talking about religious people or the mostly poor that died? The moon landings. He will come to travel to the corner of Luna, where he will be captured and put in a strange land, the unripe fruits to be subject of great scandal, great blame, to one great praise. He, the astronauts, will travel to Luna, Latin for moon or goddess of the moon. Captured could mean put on TV, and of course space was a strange land. The unripe fruits, some people think, could be the beginnings of space travel, and the cost, accidents, even moon landing deniers could all be scandal. Depending on where you stand on the space race, you might blame it or praise it. JFK and RFK being assassinated. The great man will be struck down in the day by a thunderbolt, an evil deed foretold by the bearer of a petition. According to the prediction, another falls at nighttime, conflict at Reims, London, and a pestilence in Tuscany. The great man in JFK is struck down, not by thunderbolt, but by gunshot. This deed was indeed forecasted, as he had received many death threats, petitions. Another falls could be RFK, who at nighttime, he was killed at 12:15 a.m., was assassinated. As for the last part, it's a long shot, but these murders reverberated around the world. Napoleon. Pau ne Laurent will be more of fire than of the blood. To swim in praise, the great one to flee to the confluence, he will refuse entry to the piouses. The depraved ones and the Durants will keep them imprisoned. Nostradamus doesn't mention France explicitly, but Pau ne Laurent are 3 towns in the southern part of the country. Rearrange these words and you get Napoleon Roy. In French, Roy, spelled R-O-I, means king, so you've Napoleon the King. He certainly swam in praise, and perhaps by confluence it could mean how he battled throughout Europe. Some people think the mention of Pius relates to Pope Pius VI and Pius VII, who were both imprisoned by Napoleon, as it is said in the last line. Louis Pasteur. The lost thing is discovered, hidden for many centuries. Pasteur will be celebrated almost as a godlike figure. This is when the moon completes her great cycle, but by other rumors, he shall be dishonored. Pasteur was a great French biologist, microbiologist, and chemist, and if you don't already know, it was he who created the pasteurization process, hence the name. He is also responsible for creating vaccines. He was in fact quite the demigod due to how many lives he has saved. He's one of the most important people in history. It seems he did mention Pasteur by name, as the French reads Sera Pasteur demi tu honori. The thing discovered may be the way to destroy bacteria by heating beverages and allowing them to cool, among other discoveries he made. But then it says after a while he will be dishonored, which Pasteur was many years later in 1995. That was when Gerald Lynn Geisen published his biography of Pasteur, The Private Science of Louis Pasteur, that leaves him in a less heroic light. Even a reviewer said the book asks us to question our heroes, and so perhaps Pasteur did indeed become less godlike. Then again, that's what happens to most of our mythical heroes when they are deconstructed. We might add that there are a lot of dubious translations floating around the internet, and some outright lies, and even the supposed valid facts are highly controversial. Scholars refute many of the claims and tell us many people are not able to understand the French that Nostradamus used. The debunked prophecies we have obviously left out. Thanks for watching, and tell us what you think about these prophecies in the comments. And as always, please remember to like, share, and subscribe.